What's going on, people? So I feel like I gotta go into detail as to why I'm only gonna be paying about $20 for Resident Evil 3 Remake whenever it comes out and it goes on that fire sale, much like the Resident Evil 2 Remake did, because I've been very open about how Nintendo has a more expensive version of Resident Evil to Devil May Cry on the Nintendo Switch versus everything else, and I feel like this is Capcom's fault. Like, we all know the Nintendo tax. We all know about the Nintendo tax, and you know how it's more expensive to buy the cartridge version of the game than it is to buy the digital version, which Nintendo, I see you and I respect you for that, because I've been saying it for years that in order for the digital market to be successful, the price has to come in under what you pay, for a physical copy of said game. Which means the vanilla dry version of said game, like when Halo comes out, it'll have a vanilla, a collector's, and I'm pretty sure a high-end collector's edition as well. The vanilla game is $60 alone. On the digital side, that same game should be about $30 to $40 digitally for just the game bare bones itself. And with Nintendo, they're kind of doing this on a lot of games, and they're also on their own games charging full retail, and it's the same price whether you buy it digitally or you buy it physically. But Capcom, the reason I'm not purchasing Resident Evil 3 for over $20 when it comes out is because Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 is $30 on the Switch. 4, 5, and 6 are $30 a piece. That's $90 for those 3 games. Versus the $60 that you would be paying on the PS4 or the Xbox One for the exact same fucking games. Okay? And what's even worse is it's the Nintendo Switch, so we know these games are not going to be as on point visually as, say, your PS4 base model or your Xbox One VCR model. Never mind the Xbox One S or the Xbox One X or the PS4 Pro. These games are going to look at best high-end, last generation. Why am I paying $10 more for a more weaker version of said games? That's what I'm saying. I should be paying anywhere between 10 to 15 for these when they're 20 on other consoles. So Capcom, I implore you, if you watch this, if you watch my videos and you love Resident Evil and you've supported Capcom, do not buy Resident Evil 3 Remake. Just do not spend the money on it, because these type of practices need to not happen anymore. These type of practices should not happen anymore. I should not be paying out more money on a Nintendo console than a PlayStation or an Xbox, Capcom. I should not be paying more money because I choose the game on Nintendo. That right there is not how that works. If you want that kind of money, PlayStation is here all day. PlayStation overcharges for everything. PlayStation Plus, their online service, should be about $30 and it's $60. They're overcharging people every day, because their games are trash that they release with the games with Plus. Those games are garbage and are valued at about $25 at best. And they only give you 2 of them, and they're past their prime and past anyone giving a fuck about these games anymore. Well, maybe it'll give them a second win. To do what? Most Sony games that are released by Sony are one player, not very online driven. What are we hoping gets a second win? A few dollars worth of a DLC? That's not how that works. That's not how any of this gets any money in there, because the game, which would cost the most, is free. How am I going to give you remotely close to that if Sony just gave me that bitch for free and the DLC does nothing for me, and if it does, then I wait for a sale? my point is I will end up buying Resident Evil 3 Remake. It just won't be until it's around $20 for the digital deluxe edition. Yes, I'm willing to buy the more expensive version of the game, but I'm not going to pay but $20 for it. The same way I did Resident Evil Remake 2 for the Resident Evil 2 Remake. I was not going to pay more than $20 for the same reason. And Capcom, until you fix this, until you go in and you get those prices that are on Nintendo to be the exact same as they are on the PS4 and the Xbox One, I suggest anyone who watches this, anyone who supports Capcom, to not purchase Resident Evil 3 or anything else they do until the eShop is on par price-wise with Xbox and PS4. Because Capcom does not deserve an extra $10 for games that are on older consoles and are also on the same console generation and look better on the other consoles. They're doing nothing to earn that extra $10. Now, if these were the Game of the Years, if these were the definitive editions, if these were the all DLCs included, okay. That part I have no problem with. $30, no problem, because you're showing me that I'm getting additional shit here. You're showing me that that extra money is going towards something. But these are just the vanilla versions of the game. These are not the gold editions. These are just regular games. I cannot and will not support overcharging anybody on any system. And I suggest, if you're a Capcom fan, you send them that message without buying Resident Evil 3. And I'm really hurt by it, because this is the one game I've been looking forward to when it comes to Resident Evil, is the Resident Evil 3 remake, because I loved Nemesis. I loved Nemesis because it was the first Resident Evil bad guy who got his own video game, his own story basically, versus the Tyrant, who was in 2 video games and just kind of came in. And then there's Mr. X, who was in part 2, but it wasn't really built around Mr. X. So when you look at it, Nemesis is actually the first bad guy in this universe that gets really, really recognized. And I love Nemesis for that, because he's such a badass and he just keeps coming. And I have the Funko Pop for Nemesis. I didn't buy a Liquor. I didn't buy Joe Valentine. I didn't buy Leon S. Kennedy. I bought Nemesis. I have Nemesis, the one that came with the demo to Dino Crisis. I got that on the PS1. I had the book that they wrote for the fucking game. I have Nemesis for anything I can have it on. And if I ever get a GameCube again, I'm buying Nemesis first, because I really like Resident Evil 3. So this definitely hurt me, because not only do I really love Nemesis and Resident Evil 3, I've been talking about a possibility for a Resident Evil 3 remake for a while now with all my closest friends, because I'm like, could you imagine, now that we have these open world games, if they made Nemesis and it was more of an open city game? Like, it's still in Raccoon City, but Raccoon City is now like a sandbox open world where you can go anywhere. You're not just having to follow the path they put you on, much like in the Order of 1886. You can go anywhere. You can do whatever you want to. Nemesis is still hunting you regardless. You still have the zombies. I'm like, could you imagine that? So this definitely strikes a chord within me on the level of that it is Nemesis, that it is a game that I've been super talkative about since before we even had the Resident Evil 2 remake. And it really just, it's up here and it's right here, because Nemesis is one of my favorite Resident Evil games, if not my all-time favorite Resident Evil game. I love playing games like Devil May Cry. I love playing, you know, what else have they... Fuck, I just have like 4 or 5 games I know Capcom releases. Like, I love Mega Man X. You dig what I'm saying? I love Breath of Fire. So Breath of Fire 2 is made by Capcom. You dig what I'm saying? So it's not like I hate Capcom. I just don't like these shitty practices. I don't like being charged more than I should be just because I choose to use a Nintendo gaming console over an Xbox or a PS4. That's where my problem comes in, and that's why, Capcom, I believe nobody should purchase Resident Evil 3 until it's $20. That's why I believe that I'm not purchasing anything from you until you match the exact same way on the other consoles as you should. I should not be paying $20 for Devil May Cry when for $20 I get Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3 on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. I get all 3 games, and during a fire sale I'm possibly able to pick up all 4 for that one $20 bill. I should not be getting charged $20 for Devil May Cry 1 and Devil May Cry 1 alone. I should not be having to pay $30 for Resident Evil 4 when Resident Evil 4 is fucking $20 on PS4 and is under $10 during a fire sale. You see what I'm saying? So, fix it. Fix it for the fans. Fix it for the sake of having business with Nintendo still. Fix it so your future games can make money. I'm not buying anything with Capcom written on it for over $20. Nothing. And that's on you, Capcom. And if you're a fan of Capcom, I suggest you do the same. Do not purchase a damn thing from them until they make their games the same price across the board. Because they're doing it now with Nintendo, overcharging Nintendo people. Do you really think they won't try that with PlayStation or Xbox people? The longer we let it go on Nintendo, the more likely they're going to do it on everyone else. And Capcom, if Nintendo gets rid of you, I don't know what you're going to do, because Resident Evil Revelations is the whole reason we even got a Resident Evil 5, 6, or 7. Resident Evil Revelations, it started on a Nintendo product. You might want to get this under control, because you might not have a future if your future really relies heavily upon either Xbox or PlayStation taking a chance. Because Resident Evil started on PlayStation. Resident Evil 1 was on PlayStation 1. It got a facelift and a complete makeover on Nintendo GameCube. And that became the version of the game that became the re-release for each one of these games that Capcom has done. They've copied and improved upon the GameCube version of the game, not the PlayStation version of the game. Which also, by the way, there's not been a single Resident Evil released on a Sony handheld. Meaning there's no Resident Evil on the Vita, there's no Resident Evil on the PSP as well. And when I say there's no Resident Evil, I mean standalone Resident Evil games, such as with on the Nintendo DS, Resident Evil 1, which is the only port version of the PlayStation version of Resident Evil. Again, it's called Resident Evil Deadly Silence, or DS, and it's only Resident Evil 1. Other than that, Resident Evil, you really owe Nintendo a lot. Capcom, you kind of owe Nintendo. Because if it wasn't for Revelations on the 3DS and people like me going and buying it on the 3DS, and then because people like me have friends who at time didn't have a 3DS, taking it over there and showing them this amazing Resident Evil game, because Resident Evil hadn't been the same on home consoles in a while, you wouldn't have a Resident Evil 5, 6, or 7. You wouldn't have a Resident Evil Revelations 2 without Nintendo and the 3DS. Now you have the audacity to charge Nintendo fans a Nintendo tax, or a Capcom tax in this case, because you believe 4, 5, and 6 are worth $30 a pop. They're not. I don't care if 5 and 6 have never seen the light of day on a Nintendo product. They're not worth $30. And for this and this reason alone, Capcom, I'm not buying it. I would have bought the Digital Deluxe day one. That's an easy no shit with me. I would have done it. Would have bought it, no questions. I don't give a fuck if it would have been $90. I'd have paid for it. But because you're treating us Nintendo fans the way you're treating us, I'm saying don't purchase it. I'm saying wait till it's $20 and then buy it. Because they're not going to make but $20 off of it. And it's a whole lot easier to support a $20 game than it is a full price version of a game from a company that's doing this type of shit. Capcom, really hope you can survive this coming up generation. Because the more people start opening their eyes and seeing that you're overcharging people just because they're not playing where you want them to play, you could be on that Konami chopping block sooner than later.